We start in Iran, where students have protested for a second day, again clashing with government forces. Footage posted online showed pro- and anti-government protesters clashing at a rally in Tehran, held as a tribute to the thousands killed in mass demonstrations last month. It's the first major show of defiance since the crackdown. Meanwhile, Iranian officials gave hopeful signals ahead of renewed nuclear talks with US negotiators on Thursday. Iran's foreign minister told CBS News there was, quote, a good chance to have a diplomatic solution with Washington. At the same time, White House envoy Steve Witkoff said on Fox News that President Donald Trump is wondering why Tehran had not yet, quote, capitulated. Let's listen to more from him.
I don't want to use the word frustrated. It's almost because he understands he's got plenty of alternatives. But it's curious. He's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated. Why under this sort of pressure with the amount of sea power, naval power that we have over there, why they haven't come to us and said, we profess that we don't want a weapon, so here's what we're prepared to do. And yet it's hard to sort of get them to that place.
Let's get some analysis now from Behnam Taleblu, Senior Fellow and Senior Iran Programme Director at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies. Thanks for joining us here on DW News. What do you make of how the Trump administration is dealing with Iran?
Great to be back with you, Pablo. Listen, I think it's pursuing all options at once and cultivating strategic ambiguity, and that's putting it mildly. But just to get to the heart of the clip that you just played, with respect, Chief Negotiator and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff seemed to convey the puzzlement, if not frustration, as to why the Islamic Republic hasn't yet submitted or capitulated yet. Inadvertently, and again with immense respect to the official, that ends up being a great advertisement for the revolutionary ideology of the government of the Islamic Republic, because the ideology 101 of this regime is, quote unquote, to never give in. They play to the edge. They're great bluffers. They're great poker players. And unfortunately, it seems that in the negotiating sphere, in the diplomatic sphere, Washington has pivoted to a process that actually suits Tehran rather than place the leverage that Washington is very importantly, I would say, building up. And that's, with respect to the military hardware in the region. It's my view that there is no diplomatic off-ramp to this crisis or no nuclear off-ramp to this crisis, because President Trump drew his red lines in the month of January, not about the nuclear program or the missile program, but about Iran's domestic situation. And again, as you alluded to in the front of that segment, protests again have been reignited, admittedly on university campuses in at least two major towns, Tehran and Mashhad.
All right, let's talk then about the Iranian regime, because the foreign minister has said that a diplomatic solution was possible in the nuclear talks. So from what you just said there, does that mean that Tehran believes it's showing Washington that it's not trying to make a nuclear bomb, or how do you interpret all that?
Well, interestingly enough, both Tehran and Washington are looking a little bit like one another these days. No moral equivalence, of course, but diplomatically, both sides are expressing an interest in a diplomatic, if not kinetic, outcome. However, in the real world, physically, both states are preparing for, in terms of the military architecture and the force posture of the U.S. in the Middle East, and for the Islamic Republic, the hardening of select nuclear, missile, and military sites, as well as the rebuilding of its previously bombed missile program. So both of them are talking about being interested in a deal, but both of them are physically preparing for and signaling that they're not afraid of a potential limited or even wider regional war against one another. This is an interesting thing to note here, particularly at this late stage in the crisis. With respect to the foreign minister's comments, again, I would point you to the person who has the title Supreme Leader in Iran, a title meant to be taken quite literally. And between Araghchi's MSNBC and now CBS interview, if I'm not mistaken, was a speech by Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, where instead of talking about flexibility, he was coveting martyrdom and making analogies to Islamic history where that actually was the prevalent theme.
What would Donald Trump have to get out of any deal to prove that it was actually better than the previous one signed under the Obama administration?
Well, Donald Trump has actually accomplished something far beyond what the 2015 JCPOA that he left in 2018 accomplished, which is he's been able to stop, at least for the time being, Iran's enrichment capacity. But the regime still has the know-how or the capability. So it's about giving up what's left of that capability and also making sure that the International Atomic Energy Agency can find its way back in. It's basically the strategy would be if one is interested in pursuing a deal. And again, I would caution that on the back end of 36 to 43,000 killed in Iran, the United States of America, which promised help to Iranian protesters, should not be interested in a deal. But nonetheless, the goal would be to complete the regime's nuclear disarmament and dismantlement of its atomic infrastructure, and then to go further and actually cap, limit, and roll back the long-range strike capabilities of the regime, like ballistic missiles, and to basically, in short, get an agreement that doesn't get the Islamic Republic acting abroad and at home like the Islamic Republic. This is a pretty tall order, particularly at this late stage in the crisis, which is why things are looking more kinetic, despite the somewhat cautiously positive commentary provided by Iran's foreign minister.
Now, you mentioned it before, and we've seen the images as well at the top of this segment, that this is all taking place as students are protesting against the government again in Iran. How much pressure is the Iranian regime under at home?
Well, the government, and really you could say the state or the regime in its entirety, are under immense pressure. They have just been forced to shoot their way through the biggest anti-regime uprising in the 47-year history of the Islamic Republic. And they know that no reform, no political handout, no economic handout can actually buy off those disgruntled, dissatisfied, and now large segments of society that have been divorced from the state. You have actually a massive chasm inside Iran today, where you have really fundamentally one of the most anti-American and anti-Israeli governments, and fundamentally one of the most pro-American and pro-Israeli government populations. And these things are irreconcilable, just like Islamism, which is the state ideology, and nationalism, which is the core belief of the population, are irreconcilable. And so what we saw in the past 2 days on Iranian university campuses in major urban centers is a testament to the bravery of the average Iranian dissident, because after 40 days, they have turned out again, despite the mass slaughter, to show the regime and also the world that they will not be deterred.
All right, we'll leave it there. Behnam Ben Taleblu from the Foundation for Defence of Democracies. Thanks for joining us here on DW News.
Thank you.